Welcome to Teach for the Bay, the afternoon session, and you'll be hearing from Teen Tech. It looks like it's 5:03, so tell me when you want to get started. Pretty soon?
Yeah, we were thinking 5:05 in case more people
Great,
show up.
great. Um, in the meantime, if people could put their names and affiliations in the chat. So if you're a student, high school, community college, a career changer, just put your name and information in the chat. And then just to let you know that at www.teachforthebay.com, I'll put our website in the chat where you found the program. We will be posting recordings and information from all of the workshops. So you'll be able to visit. If you miss a key point or you miss something, you'll be able to go back and see it. So again, thank you for being here and welcome to Teen Tech.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started now. It looks like most people are here. Feel free to keep sharing your information in the chat. But first, I think we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. There are four of us here. So hi, my name is Brian. I am currently a senior in high school, and I'm from Walnut Creek, and I'm the president of TeenTechSF.
I guess I'll go next. Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm a junior and I'm from the Santa Clara County area. I'm currently the STEM workshop chair of TeenTechSF.
Hey everyone, my name is Reha. I'm also a senior in high school and I'm from the East Bay and I'm one of the vice presidents at TeenTechSF.
Hi everyone, my name is Harini. I'm a senior in high school and I'm from near Tracy and I'm also the vice president of TeenTechSF.
Hi, my name is Tony. I'm currently studying at CCSF in early childhood education, and I've retired from licensing, and I am basically coming back into the workforce as a consultant. So I want to learn as much as I can.
Yeah, do any of the other attendees want to introduce themselves? Cool. Well, a lot of you have already introduced yourselves in the chat, so that works too. I guess first of all, we'll go into who we are and what we do as an organization, so you're a little more familiar with our work before we go further into this. Our mission is to inspire and empower the next generation of tech innovators and civic entrepreneurs. We're committed to equal access to tech for all teens because diversity fuels innovation. Run for and by teens, all our events are free. And we think our work is important because the Bay Area is filled with opportunities in tech. It's one of the best places to climb the socioeconomic ladder. And also because there are 1.1 million computing jobs expected by 2024, although this wasn't a report a few years ago. There are still a lot of jobs in the tech sector or in STEM that are expected to go unfilled. And because even though it's one of the best places to climb the socioeconomic ladder, it's also a place where there's a lot of income inequality and underserved communities. And so we want to ensure equal access to tech education for all, because you never know who from where will have the next big idea. Cool. So since launching, we've connected about 3,000 teens in the Bay Area and on 5 continents with STEM resources and opportunities through speaker and panel sessions, STEM workshops, which we'll be focusing more on today, and then hackathon events. So before we go into our workshops and the main part of this workshop, we do want to highlight, we usually have 3 major events that happen each year. So the 2021 Civic Hackathon is actually coming up this weekend. These are pictures from last year, so of course it's a little different because it was online. But a hackathon is an event that's usually 2 to 3 days long, or 1 to 2 days long, where teams work in, or people work in teams. They're given prompts that are related to social issues and civic problems, and then they pick a prompt to work on and spend those 1 or 2 days developing tech solutions to those problems. So you'll see on the screen here some of the presentations of those. This one was a presentation of an app that was telling stories about our justice system to advance racial equity. This one down here was about helping the environment, and there's a bunch more on the slide. Um, our Global Youth Summit is our Global Youth Summit is typically held in December. And so that's when we invite speakers from around the world. In this specific event, we had a UC Berkeley PhD candidate whose PhD thesis was concentrating, I believe, on gene editing for COVID-19. He was involved in a lab connected to UC Berkeley that was developing rapid tech kits for COVID-19. So we had him as a keynote speaker. And then we also had a bunch of workshops and also panels for students to learn more about the intersections of tech and health, and to be able to learn how to 3D print or create their own video game if they wanted to in our breakout workshops. Most recently, we had our STEM Inclusivity Forum. And for that, we invited a bunch of organizations who are also working on getting teens or underserved and underrepresented communities into STEM. And so our keynote speaker has a nonprofit called Lensational, which she's based out of London right now. And basically her organization is empowering women through digital photography in many developing countries around the world. And we also featured other organizations that are a bit closer to home and that work with teens. And then, so those are our 3 major events, but throughout the year, we also offer STEM workshops. So I'll let our STEM workshop chair introduce you to what the team does.
Yeah. So since the COVID pandemic is still in the midst, our workshop team has been working mainly online. And during online sessions, the workshop team is in charge of organizing workshop series, creating workshops, and teaching workshops. Since last year, many workshop series have been launched by our workshop team to provide quality teaching to all students at home. Our workshops can include topics like 3D printing, web development, MIT App Inventor, Python, 3D design. However, at the times without COVID, our workshop team will participate in more in-person activities, as you can see on the slides. We mainly outreach to partner organizations like UC Berkeley Trio, Lawrence Hall of Science, Facebook, and other organizations to plan events where we can offer our workshops at. And some of the in-person workshops we teach include Makey-Makeys, Little Bits, and web development.
Yeah, so that's an introduction to what we do. First, we'll talk about the first online conference we created, and then how we also transition our workshops from in-person to online and delivering an equally interactive experience.
So essentially towards the beginning of the pandemic is when we realized that we would have to transition our events online in order to be safe and follow the protocol. So the first event that we organized was called COVID Connect, and essentially we hope to connect teens with tech leaders and youth and other people so that they would know and feel empowered to be able to make a change or make a difference during this time. So here's the schedule. Our event ran from 1:50 p.m. through 3:20 p.m. And we had a keynote speaker, Cheryl Davis, who is the executive director of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, and she gave a wonderful keynote on inclusivity and equity during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also had a youth panel, which was essentially the tech and maker movement of COVID-19 initiatives, which featured Michelle Song, who is the co-founder of Masks for All, Shivali Gulati, who is the founder of Girl Genius, a magazine for girls in STEM, and Sang Duong, who's the captain of a robotics team called Curiosity Robotics. During this event, we also offered workshops within breakout rooms, and the first workshop was the Curiosity Robotics mask making workshop, which students learned how to basically 3D fabricate using CAD their own face shields that they would then be able to print using a 3D printer. There was also the Masks for All workshop where students were able to learn how to sew their own cloth masks, and I think there was another workshop whose slide was skipped, which, yeah. There was also the TeenTechSF COVID-19 database development and analysis workshop, which was to help teach teens data literacy and how they could essentially analyze the COVID-19 data themselves. So the takeaways from this workshop is that we, basically the highlights is that we had a very high turnout. So there were 100 people who joined us. We were also able to have smooth transitions between the main room and the breakout rooms for our workshops. The leadership team was able to generate questions for our speaker and panelists in the moment. And due to it being online, we were able to have many links being sent out through either to other signups or resources, and everything was able to be successfully recorded. However, some improvements that we had to make sure to do was to save the chat, since there were resources and people discussing things in the chat that would have been useful. We also should have had a longer workshop, probably an hour instead of 30 minutes, in order to be able to fully teach the material. And we learned to prepare questions ahead of time in case the participants aren't asking as many questions as we hoped they would.
Okay, yeah, and after our COVID Connect session, that's when we started with our first online workshops, which was in the fall of last year. And so prior to the pandemic and to shelter in place, 4 out of 5 of the workshops that we offered required physical material. And so what we did is we ended up developing new workshops. Over time, it became over a dozen new workshops that were fit for the online space. And we served over 300 students that year in the summer, fall, and the spring with highly rated workshops. And so we'll show you what some of those workshops look like the contents of those, so you get an idea of what it looks like. And then after that, we'll share some takeaways we learned along the way, and also how you can apply this for your teaching. So one of the first workshops we offered was on 3D printing. So I'll let Daniel talk about these 2 workshops.
So 3D printing with Tinkercad was actually the first workshop we've ever offered online. It was hosted in the 2020 Summer Workshop Series, which is also the first workshop or online workshop series we had. And we had over 70 students in that workshop. And we used Tinkercad as a software since it could be easily accessed on a website, which meant that even if people didn't have the capacity on their computer to download software, they could use Tinkercad online. Next slide, please. So the main plan of the workshop was to go over the basics of 3D printing. So that included what 3D printing means, how a 3D printer would actually print a material. And we also taught how to operate Tinkercad. We taught the participants the basics of how the controls work and how to create different shapes. And finally, with all of the information taught, we also had the participants build a witch hat for the final project. So website development 2 is also hosted in the 2020 Fall Workshop Series. and we had over 40 students attend this workshop. For this workshop, it was basically, it had the same ideas from the first workshop we were offering in person, except this time it was a little bit more challenging. So yeah, as I said, it was revamped from our first workshop, and we added in-depth CSS and JavaScript, which are both programming languages. We also ended up creating a mini project as well, similar to the Tinkercad workshop. We had our participants create a calculator for their final project. Yeah, that's what the calculator looks like. Beyond the workshops, our participants learned how to create models of their own inventions and print them out. They acquired the skills to build a website that can solve real world problems.
Okay.
One of our, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say exactly what you were saying. Go ahead.
Okay. Another one of our workshops that we've taught in the past is the MIT App Inventor workshop. And so this is just an intuitive visual programming environment for building apps. And we use block-based code, which makes the steps of developing an app simple and efficient. And one of our most easy and like beginner-friendly tutorials is the ball bounce app. So the process that we use for MIT App Inventor is we first design the canvas by dragging out all the canvas components and adjusting the height and width of the canvas and adding objects like balls. And then the next step is to add the code blocks. So the code blocks are, again, they're just block-based code, pretty straightforward to use. And what we do is we teach participants to drag out different blocks, and each block has different functions, and we use it to set basically headings and speed. And the third step that we do in our workshop is we test out the app. So we walk through the participants on how to connect the Android device. This could be done through the Chromebook or emulator. And we walk through how to test the app. And the ball bounce app is just basically flinging the ball. And what it does is it just bounces around the edges of the screen. So these are the three main components to our workshop. And so with the MIT App Inventor, we had around 40 participants. It was very engaging. We had an interactive with Q&A. We taught this through slides, and I thought it was pretty fun to build and see others extend the app by adding obstacles, changing colors, etc. And since this was just like a first step, I think a lot of people went out of their way like after the workshop to expand upon it. So overall, we thought it went well. And here are just some examples of what we included when we were teaching. So this is an example of adding a canvas by just dragging it out from the screen. So it makes it very easy for the participant to see exactly what to do, because we used like arrows to show how they drag the canvas onto the screen. And here's another example where they can just easily see the ball on the side and see all the functions, what you can do with ball one, like when it's collided with something else, when it's dragged out, or when the edge is reached. And this just shows the user how to like interact with the interface. And here's another one where we're just like showing them how to call ball1.bounce when the edge is reached. So what this does is just when the ball one reaches the edge of the screen, it should bounce off. Yeah, and then we concluded with how to extend the app at home, giving our participants some ideas on what they can do. They can change the color, they can change the scale speed, they can give the ball obstacles or targets to hit, and they can make a paddle to intercept it. So another workshop that we hosted with TeenTechSF at many of our events, this was a pretty popular one. It was data analysis with COVID-19 data. So we went over what we can do with available COVID-19 data and giving them access of different resources where data is collected and how it can be used for data analysis. So we go over how to create our own tables and how to sort the data using our own criteria that's gathered from different GitHub repositories.
Yeah, and also I think what made this workshop special was that this is real COVID data that's updated. It used to be daily, maybe now it's less frequent, but it's straight from Johns Hopkins. And so it's used by medical professionals and everyone working um, professionally.
Yeah, and through this data, people can create scatter plots, exponential charts, and one of the most important things, comparing infection rates. So these graphs just give an example of different, like what the different cases and infection rates in different places around the world. And we also involved math of exponential growth in our workshop, explaining how E is the exposure and P is the probability of infection. And to reduce infection rate, we would need to reduce exposure, or also known as like social distancing. And to reduce probability of infection, maybe using masks or improving hygiene. And we used these variables in the equation to create a graph. And some tools that we had the students use was they used the online Jupyter notebooks, which was pretty easy to use to upload their COVID data. And these Jupyter notebooks allowed students to run the Python code in order to analyze the data effectively. And the reason that we use online Jupyter notebooks instead of like other ones is because we want to avoid the students to download and set up Python, which is a pretty lengthy process. And so once everyone uploads the data, we start teaching how to code in Python and create these tables and graphs using, as Brian said, the latest COVID-19 data that are gathered from different sources. And here are some examples of Python libraries.
Another workshop that we offered was our Pygame workshop, which was basically an intro to game design. Here you can see the end product that every student would have created by the end of the workshop. So the workshop was used with slides. It started off explaining what Python is, what Pygame is, that they're a programming language and how they can be learned. After that, we taught them syntax, basically all the basics of Python, like the libraries, functions, variables. That was done through exercises. I was also, because it was online, I was able to share my screen and type it out along with the students, so that was very helpful. And then in the end product, here is a snowfall animation. So basically you have the blue screen and then an animated snowfall, which falls down over and over. And also, since there was extra time towards the end of the workshops, we were able to modify the snowfall animation. So every student kind of got to customize their own. So some people would change their background to green or make their snow red, make it larger or smaller. So that aspect of it was something that they were really able to enjoy. And then there was a second part to our video game design workshop. And that workshop was broken into two further parts. The first one being an intro to Python again, and an intro to Turtle, which is a Python library. And then the second part of that allowed students to use Turtle and Python in order to create their own simplified version of the snake game, which they could then play.
And so what we learned from our first workshops there was that it was possible to create interactive learning opportunities through the online space, and that it was useful to use animation throughout our workshops and demoing it live in front of them on a screen that can actually help to enhance learning. And so while online events, like students could log into Zoom and they don't have to be engaged, it can also lead to less intimidation for students who feel like if they were in an in-person setting, they might be concerned that they're behind other students, and then that pressure builds up. But if you're just online and you're in your own home or a place where you feel more comfortable, then it might be easier to just focus on following on yourself with what's directly in front of you on the screen. So there are trade-offs between online and in-person events, but there are benefits to both. In addition, one thing that we briefly touched on one of the workshops that really works well for engagement is leveraging the features that Zoom has. So at first we tried emoji reactions. We said, oh, why don't you give a thumbs up if you've reached this step? And so although that works, Zoom reactions, if you give a thumbs up, it only stays up there for a few seconds. And then the thumbs up goes away. So it might be difficult to actually get a sense of how many people gave a thumbs up. By the time you count some of them, other ones have disappeared. Um, and also, when next we tried out typing in the chat, um, or telling users to type in the chat, we would say, type done if you've completed this step, or we would ask them questions, and then they would be able to answer it. Maybe we'd give them choices, to give them things to be able to answer a question. And so what we found there is that once one or two users respond in the chat, then you'd get a storm of comments following, because once one student's brave enough to type in the chat, then other students feel like it's okay to do that as well. And so if you want a lot more interactivity, it really just takes one or two people who are engaged in typing in the chat to do that. But what's even more convenient for attendees is if they don't have to type in the chat, when a message pops up, which is a poll, and they just have to click one or two buttons. And so we found that oftentimes when we had Zoom polls where we asked users, or where we asked attendees, do you understand the concept so far? And we give answers like, yes, or I'm not sure, or I'm almost there, but I'm not done yet. We'd get almost, in many cases, we get 100% response rate, but we usually get close to that. And one thing that's not listed here that we continue to use that's very important is related to accessibility. So you mentioned that we don't have our attendees download Python or any software. Instead, we have them use things that are available online. So that way students who might not be sure how to download something, or their computer doesn't let them download it, that won't be a problem. They can all have access to the materials online. And also, there are always a bunch of resources for students to be able to do additional projects to enhance what they've already learned with, say, MIT App Inventor, or with the data analysis, because those platforms are free and accessible, and there are a lot of resources that exist for the platforms that we choose. And I think Daniel will also talk about some of the more recent improvements and events that we've had.
Yeah, so some of the more recent online workshop series we've had include our Spring Workshop series and the most recent 2021 Summer Workshop series, which just ended last month. In the Spring Workshop series, we started testing with multiple workshops that include the same topic, but with different stages of difficulty. So, for example, we had in total 3 workshops in the series about Onshape, which is a 3D design software. And throughout the 3 different workshops, we gradually increased the level of difficulty. So this allowed for more experienced 3D design students to also enjoy our workshops and also to learn from them. And in the 2021 Summer Workshop series, we experimented with separating different workshops into different topics. And specifically, there were 3 main categories. So they were game design, app design, and web design. We had 2 game design workshops, as Harini mentioned. The first one was Python basics, and the second one was creating a snake game with Python. And we also took the things we learned from the Spring Workshop series by increasing the level of difficulty into this workshop series. So we ended up having the Python basics as the more simple workshop, and then the one after that, the snake game, being a little bit more challenging and implementing the things we learned from the Python basics workshop. And then we also had 3 game design workshops with MIT App Inventor, as Reha mentioned, and also 3 web design workshops that I will talk a little bit more about later. But this structure kind of allowed more people to learn more in depth into these different topics and create a tech portfolio for themselves. And it also basically gives a reason for our participants to go to our next workshop, since all of them are connected, and you'll be using what you learned from the first in the second workshop. So 3D design with Onshape was one of the workshops that we provided in the spring workshop series. So in the first workshop, we introduced the basics of Onshape. And then in the second workshop, we introduced more advanced controls that weren't included in the first workshop. And then lastly, we made a fidget spinner design in the third workshop. So in the third workshop, we kind of used both the skills learned in the first and the second to create a final project. And it is also because of this workshop's difficulty that we started including breakout rooms where workshop leaders will help students that were having trouble understanding the concepts or were falling behind. And starting with these workshops, we also created breakout rooms for anyone who was looking for individual assistance. And this is in addition to sending the workshop recording and also the slides and sometimes the code to attendees after the workshop. In website development 3, our workshop leaders taught students how to create a weather app. So as you can see, it tells you the location of the place you want to get the weather data from, and also some of the basic data there. And this material was a lot more advanced than the first and the second website development workshops. And we had to teach them how to extract data from online databases and then displaying it with high-level CSS coding, which is a coding language. Some of the other web development workshops we've offered are creating a personal website, creating a video web player, and also creating web servers with Flask. So these 3 workshops were actually provided to our participants in the 2021 Summer Workshop Series. And these 3 kind of increased in difficulty, and it provided a good insight onto different topics in the web development field.
Yeah, and before we conclude, we do want to mention our in-person workshops. So we talked a lot about how we transitioned to online, but we're also looking to go back to in-person to offer those workshops soon, but we wanted to give a glimpse into what those workshops look like. And so these are some images from our workshops. And all of our workshops that are in person are hands-on. So I guess I would explain one of them, which is the Makey workshop. You can see it over here in these 2 images, or actually about half of the images on the screen here. And so basically what we do in order to teach students how to code is we use this tool called Makey, where there's this circuit board, which is connected to a computer. And then from that circuit board, you can attach wires which connect to something like a piece of fruit or Play-Doh. And then if you tap the Play-Doh or the piece of fruit, then it will you can actually program it to make a sound or repeat a sound or repeat a pattern of noises, or do a whole bunch of different tools like that. And so in order to introduce teens to code, we want to make this as interactive as possible. And then when they initially set up the program and then tap the fruit and hear that it makes a noise, it makes them think, well, why did that happen? And then they have to go in and see how the program works. And then we tell them, okay, If you wanted to do this with your program and make this be the output of the Makey Makey, then how do you think you'd go out and do that? And so teens can actually get together with other attendees and think about how they would program the program to be able to get that to work. And then at the end of this workshop, or towards the end of this workshop, we tell teens to work in groups to be able to create their own song with the Makey Makey. And so they tap different pieces of fruit or objects or different keys to make different noises. You can also record sounds, which output through the Makey Makey, and together they, you could call it play the instrument, but play the objects that are attached to the Makey Makey and present their song in front of everyone. And I remember the last time this workshop was offered and everyone really enjoyed hearing each other's songs and being able to make all them and like make melodies come to life through code. And so for most of our students who do participate in our workshops, TeenTechSF workshops or events are their first experience in tech. And so we want to not only provide a student perspective, but we want to be able to give them the opportunity to be hands-on, not necessarily give them all the answers and say, this is exactly how you would do it, but let them be able to explore and question the concepts they see in front of them, and then be able to come to that understanding for themselves of how it works. And so they're able to apply those concepts to other projects that they create. And so I learned fairly recently, although I don't know too much about neuroscience, when you're really curious about something, and you try and make connections in your brain and critically think and try and put pieces together, that causes more action inside of your brain with neurons firing action potentials. And basically that makes you more excited and more wanting to learn. So I encourage you, I encourage us as teachers to be able to let teens or whoever you teach to experiment for themselves. And so basically all of our workshops are experimentation, some more than others. The hands-on ones, of course, but also with our online workshops, we demo how to do something, or we give them hints on how to do something, but we also provide resources and prompts saying, what could you add to this program in order to make it do this or that, so they can continue exploring that if they'd like. And so, yeah. So that I understand that it is 5:41, so we do have some extra time, although I think that's mostly the things that we wanted to cover and leave for you today. And so we're happy that any of us are happy to answer any questions in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute and ask us questions. Before we go, however, we do want to mention that we do have our upcoming TeenTechSF Civic Hackathon, which is this weekend. Let me just type the link in the chat. And so that's the link for more details on that event. But basically, I explained what our Civic Hackathon is at the beginning of the event. This year is going to be similar to how I explained it, although we're also inviting community leaders from the Mission Neighborhood Health Center and from UC Berkeley, microbiology, feminist AI, and also teens who have worked on COVID-related social tech projects to be able to inspire the teens who compete and create tech projects in the hackathon. So that's this weekend, and we encourage you to attend, or we encourage you, your teens to sign up for that event. In addition, I do want to put in another link. So Teach for the Bay does want to hear your feedback on what you thought about this workshop, and so do we. And so we would all appreciate if you took some time to fill out the Google form if you don't have any additional questions about this workshop or about us in general.
Does anyone have any questions?
I just want to know, if any of your team, you guys do such a great job explaining information and sharing. Are any of your team members interested in teaching?
Yeah, I guess I can answer that. So, wait, by teaching, do you mean like being a teacher in a school or just?
Teacher in high school, at college, in a job site? I mean, because you're obviously teaching now and you've got great experiences.
I can't really speak on other workshop leaders, but I guess personally, like it could be a career path for me, but I'm not sure. I think like inspiring like other people and being a good role model for them could be something that like is fun. So
Yeah, I would say, although I don't think it at the moment, I don't think it'd be my like main career path. I do really enjoy teaching these workshops, and I get really inspired by other teachers who I think do a really good job of allowing me to connect with the subjects that I'm learning. So as of now, I think that's something I do want to keep doing like on the side, but I'm not exactly sure at the moment where I would go with this. I see a question that was asked directly to me, which was, how did you know about TeenTechSF? So I learned about TeenTechSF. My parents found on social media posts about the 2018 Civic Hackathon. And so I came and I attended as a participant, and that was my first hackathon. And so I saw how the teens had actually organized this event, and I was impressed with how they were able to put all of that together. And so I thought, I might as well attend a few meetings and see if this is something of interest to me. And sure enough, I've stayed for very long. We can send a copy of the recording or the slides after the meeting. I see that question too. I don't know if any other student leaders want to answer any previous questions.
yeah, I guess I can quickly answer the last question as well. So like Brian, I was also a participant in one of the events, the STEM Inclusivity Forum. And actually in one of the presentation photos, you can see me talking to the founder of TeenTechSF. So yeah, the process of me knowing TeenTechSF is pretty similar to Brian's, but yeah, just wanted to put that out there.
I have a question for you guys, if that's okay. It's Terry, and I'm just curious because I know a lot of times it takes a lot of effort and higher kind of IQs, I'll say. Are you guys inclusive to those students who might have like special needs in terms of learning issues, or is it a hindrance? No? There's
Yeah.
some students who might not be mathematical geniuses, let's say, and have trouble with math, and I don't know how much math is required, but they might be very creative. So there's that fine line. So how inclusive are you, or is the organization?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's really important. So kids who have like special learning conditions are not a hindrance at all. And so we set online, we did set up the individual breakout rooms so we can help students individually. But we really want to be able to target and serve underserved or underrepresented communities. And so we mentioned, or some of the organizations we mainly partnered with are UC Berkeley Trio or Stanford Rise, which serve students who, if they were to apply to college, they would be first gen, and also and also students of color. And so in terms of, I guess, supporting students with learning conditions, our workshops most of our workshops, or the ones that we offer to other organizations, and the ones we start with, are all very like beginner level. So anyone should be able to come in, especially the hands-on ones. Or we and tell them everything, every step of the process, how they're able to do this, and it's very beginner level. Um, and that's just to get students, if they want to, excited about tech or to see what it's about. Because we want to tell students or enable students to realize that they have the power to create a website or an app, or a different type of program, um, regardless of what background they come from. And so, yeah, yeah, I think that answers the question. If
It
maybe a
really
follow-up.
does.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate, because sometimes there's a little hesitancy for some students,
Yeah,
because they feel like, everybody says it's a geeky, nerdy, or, you know, high,
yeah,
high, high GPA. And although they might not have that high GPA, they might have that creative, even the creative spirit in them,
yeah,
and the tenacity, So thank
yeah.
you.
Well, I'd just like to thank you all for a workshop. I'm always impressed with Teen Tech. Keep it going, and you are teaching right now, so you're developing great skills. So thank you for your time and your enthusiasm.
Thank you all for coming. We
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
If there are no more questions, just one last reminder to fill out that evaluation form.
Thank you all.
Thank you.